a few minutes. And we have several governor's appointees appearing today. And I'd like to begin with file item 2. We'll go back to file item 1 because I do have one issue on reference bills that we're checking out right now. Let me begin though before we go through the formal part of our agenda and make a couple of announcements that have already been made publicly, but now that we're sitting here, as everybody knows, Brian Kelly, longtime staff member for the Senate and the policy director in my office, has taken a job with the administration, and fortunately it's a position subject to confirmation. So that's all I got to say. Now Brian is great and has done a great job for 17 years in the Senate, and we're going to miss him a lot, and he'll do great work in the transportation area in the administration. But we're very lucky because Anthony Williams, who's been the director of appointments in the Rules Committee, is coming over to be my policy director within the Pro Tem's office, and it is a great addition. Anthony, as you know, brings a breadth of knowledge and experience in a whole lot of areas, and I'm very happy and grateful that he's taken on this assignment. And then Annette Perini, who's sitting in the second row here, is going to be the new director of appointments. She is currently the chief of staff to Senator Joe Simitian, and will be transitioning over the next several weeks. We're very happy to have you. So, just so everyone's up to date on all of that. Let us begin with the first couple governor's appointees appearing today, and we'll ask the two members of the Public Employment Relations Board to come on up together, Eugene Huguenin Jr. and Anita I. Martinez, both up for confirmation as members. Ms. Martinez is the chair of the board. We welcome both of you.
Thank you.
Invite you to introduce any member of your family or a special guest to make a brief opening statement, and then we will ask you some questions. Whoever wants to start. It's up to you. Flip a coin.
I'll go first.
Go. Yes.
All right.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Chairman Steinberg and members of the committee. I am honored to address you at this, my confirmation hearing. Before fielding any questions you may have, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself, my work history and qualifications, and my goals as chair of the Public Employment Relations Board. I am a native San Franciscan whose parents emigrated from Nicaragua in the late 40s. They worked tirelessly in blue-collar jobs to attain the American dream for my two brothers and myself. They taught me the value of a strong work ethic, kindness, and humility. I was the first in my family to go to college, receiving a stellar education without the burden of debt. To this day, I remember both of my parents beaming with pride the day of my college graduation. Now I am the proud mother of two independent, strong-willed, bilingual children. Matt, 26, is a special education teacher at a low-income public elementary school who will receive his master's degree in special education in May. Raquel, 22, received her master's degree in sociology last May and currently has an internship with the San Francisco Public Defender's Office Juvenile Division. She is awaiting results from her law school applications for fall 2012 semester. Since the age of 20, I have been a neutral labor relations professional. During college, I worked as an intern for 2.5 years at the National Labor Relations Board in San Francisco. After graduating in 1975, I joined a small cadre of NLRB representatives who were tasked with putting together the Agricultural Labor Relations Board. I then worked at the ALRB's Salinas and Sacramento regional offices as a board agent, primarily conducting elections and investigating unfair practice charges. When the ALRB lost its funding in February 1976, I was hired as part of a team to develop policies and procedures for the Educational Employment Relations Board, now known as PERB. I opened PERB's San Francisco regional office on April 1st, 1976, and have been at PERB ever since. During the last 36 years, I have processed representation in unfair practice cases, conducted representation hearings in elections, and written hearing officer and administrative decisions. I have taught interest-based bargaining principles and mediation techniques to staff and constituents, and have addressed union management and neutrals at conferences and trainings. I have supervised the PERB San Francisco office since 1982 and oversaw the Los Angeles regional office for a short time as well. My mediation and settlement work in collaboration with many hundreds of employers and public employee unions during the last 36 years are what I am proudest of. As chair of the board, I have several goals. First, resolving cases expeditiously. We have already modified procedures at the board and staff levels to enable PERB to clear out its backlog of cases and resolve cases efficiently. Working with the General Counsel and the Chief ALJ, we are working to reduce the number of days it takes to process cases at all stages. Second, giving top priority to representation cases. These cases primarily involve petitions from unions seeking to represent employees as their exclusive representative. Resolving questions concerning representation quickly is essential for stability and effective labor management relations. Third, making PERB more user-friendly. We are updating our regulations, our forms, and our website to give plain English guidance to our constituents. Our internal computer systems will be updated to support our staff in their work and to aid PERB managers in tracking cases. Training and resource materials will be provided to our highly dedicated staff so that they can continue to stay current in labor law trends. We are also encouraging our professional staff to engage with and meet our constituents at conferences, participate on panel presentations, and attend other labor law functions. Finally, the PERB Advisory Committee has been revived as an important asset to the board, providing input on relevant issues affecting PERB's work. I'm gratified and humbled to have received the governor's appointment to the position of chair at PERB. I assure you that under my leadership, PERB will deliver on its mission to oversee our state's public sector collective bargaining laws fairly, impartially, efficiently, and professionally. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr.
You're welcome.
I'm going to provide you some water.
Thanks.
You just proved you didn't eat. Thank you. I, too, am very pleased to be here today to address your questions and to provide you information regarding my qualifications to serve as the governor's appointment to the Public Employment Relations Board. My history is significantly different than Anita's. I have spent my time as an advocate in the collective bargaining process and as an attorney representing unions, principally teachers' unions, since approximately 1979. Prior to that time, I served as a consultant to teachers' unions in the collective bargaining process, negotiating contracts, processing grievances, etc. I am what you might call a blue-collar worker from the collective bargaining process in the public sector. I served for some part of that time in the state of Washington and principally here in California. I emigrated to California in 1973 and finding it a wonderful place to live, stayed on. I have two sons, both almost 40, both with families of their own and 6 grandchildren. One of those sons lives near Seattle with his family, where he is an evangelical minister. Not something I would have chosen for him, but, you know, youngsters choose their own path. And another in Salinas, where he works as an administrator at the Laguna Seca Raceway, in charge of all their facilities. He, too, has children, and he's married to a woman who teaches high school in Salinas. The background that I bring is largely different than Anita's. I've spent my time in the trenches and developing an appreciation for the wonderful process that is collective bargaining. It enables parties who start from disparate positions to reach agreement. There was a stamp that was published by the U.S. Postal Service some years ago to honor collective bargaining, and the phrase on it was, "out of conflict, accord." And that's what collective bargaining enables us to do. I'm very interested in this position on the Public Employment Relations Board because it's a different kind of a position than I have held in the past, and because it's about setting the outer boundaries for the conduct of the parties in collective bargaining. PERB's role is to define those boundaries and to enforce them when either one of the parties is challenged as to its behavior in the collective bargaining system. So we're the referees, as it were. And
so what is the difference between being an advocate and being a neutral, in your view?
in my view, a neutral steps back from the interests of the parties and worries about the interests of the system, the collective bargaining system.
Can you see yourself ruling against the union side in a given case if the facts and the law dictated that result?
Without difficulty, sir, without difficulty.
Okay. Didn't mean to interrupt, but...
No, that's fine. It's important. We've all had our share as advocates at one time or another in our respective histories, and we know the difference between policy making from a neutral perspective and advocating for one party in the process.
Good.
And I can assure you I understand the difference. And my colleagues in the management bar representing public employers, some of whom are in the room, and some of whom have sent letters to the committee commending my appointment and confirmation, can attest to that.
Very good. I'm sure we'll hear from some of them. So let me begin the questioning with the state of PERB itself. Because I must tell you, this agency has a reputation, or has had a reputation over time for being woefully underfunded with big backlogs and not really a place where, you know, there's a lot of action, so to speak, around resolving collective bargaining disputes. At least that's been my impression. Maybe you'll correct me. What is the backlog currently at PERB? How long does it take to have a case go from the filing of a case to a resolution? What percentage of cases do you mediate successfully to resolution? What's the state of PERB right now?
Do you want me to start?
Go ahead.
Okay. For the last fiscal year, we received 744 unfair practice charges. Of those charges, just about half of them get dismissed at the initial investigation stage with the General Counsel's office. We have a new General Counsel that was appointed at the same time that we were. We have a new Chief ALJ that was hired by the board, and both of those individuals have really reworked their shops to get cases decided much more quickly. There's a very big emphasis in the General Counsel's office if a charge has a complaint issued, to try and mediate that dispute so that the parties can settle their dispute at the lowest possible level. And in terms of if the case doesn't settle there, it goes to a formal hearing. And the Chief ALJ is really monitoring the calendars of the 6 ALJs that we have. And from time of the informal to the date of the first day of hearing, it's about 3 months. So that's really cut down, because it used to be 6 months to about a year. And so by setting 3 cases a month, that has really helped move cases along. What that's also done is really encourage parties to settle, because if you know that your case is 6 months, a year down the road, you're not going to do anything to try and settle it. Whereas if you know it's in 3 months, you have to prepare witnesses, you've got to get documents. There's a lot of time and energy and effort that goes into that. And so parties are more apt. We get a lot of settlements in between the time of the end of the settlement conference to the date of the first day of hearing.
Okay, when did this change take place? And what go ahead.
We were appointed last May. The new General Counsel came in May also, and the new Chief ALJ was hired, I think, about July.
So what are the 2 or 3 things that have led to a reduction in the time between filing and the first day of hearing from what you say 6 months to a year to 3 months? What are the things that have changed?
I believe that the General Counsel really monitoring the types of cases that are coming in, really getting the staff counsel involved with their cases, not letting them sit necessarily, and just really trying to streamline the process. The General Counsel is very much aware that the Governor's Office believes that PERB can and should move cases quickly, and that's coming from the board level on down. And I think that staff is really, they've just implemented different procedures. And we've also been able to fill a couple of vacant positions, which helps because you absolutely need people to do the cases. And that's been a problem.
Okay. Thank you. Senator Alquist.
Thank you. I had some of the same concerns you had, and so I really just have 1 or 2 other questions. The first one for Chair Martinez, and we have a lot in common, actually, I didn't realize. Yeah, immigrant family, etc. You had been a staffer with the board since 1976. And
yes.
2 questions. Yes. What have you learned since becoming president of the board? And the second part of the question is, do you feel confident that in your new position in dealing with PERB staff whom you've worked with for many years, that you will be able to challenge them in the ways that are appropriate?
I'll start with the second piece.
Okay.
And in my new position, I really do believe that I have the complete support of the staff and my fellow board members. I've been in the trenches for 36 years. I've done the work. I know the work. And I really do believe that the staff is a really dedicated staff. And with new procedures, things are moving and things are being done differently. What I've learned becoming chair, as a staff person, you don't know really what the board does or how they do it. And it's been really interesting to kind of cross over to that side. And I think that there are ways to speed up the issuance of decisions at the board level by having, we talked about when we met.
We talked yesterday, and
yeah.
I thought I was very impressed with the timelines that
Right.
you had.
We
and
meet
ways to get things done.
Right. We meet every 3 weeks, and they're called case management meetings, and all board members attend along with their board counsel. We have goals that each board member is working on, that they're going to deliver drafts by the next case management meeting. I really encourage the board members to speak amongst themselves sometimes before pen hits the paper, so that if there are some issues that are going to arise, they might be able to talk about them beforehand. I also encourage the board counsel to do that, because that sometimes helps, because then they can go talk to their own board member and whittle down the potential disputes. So just in changing, I think, some procedures, and I think that keeping track of the docket, seeing how many cases are on the docket, we don't want to just issue 10 cases, but then we get 15, because then you're never making any headway. And so we're really, and I can say this for all board members, everybody is really dedicated and committed to getting cases out. We know that parties are waiting for the decisions in their disputes, and we are, going to do that.
Thank you. The question I had for Mr. Huguenin was already asked, and you gave a great answer today, as you did yesterday in our private meeting. So I feel very comfortable about your change in role.
Thank you.
And my last question is, and whomever would like to answer it, in the 1980s, the board had 90 to 95 staff. Since then, the board's workload has increased, with the board now having jurisdiction over cities, counties, and special district employees. But now the board has a staff of 40. The other component is that last year the legislature passed SB 609 by our colleague Senator Negrete McLeod, which requires the board to uphold or overturn an AJL certification decision within 180 days. So if I look at resources, timelines, and new law to follow, how do you make this work, and how is the board going to operate and fulfill its statutory duties at current staffing levels?
Let me try that. Yesterday, when we met with you, one of the things that Ms. Martinez explained was that the mix of our casework has changed significantly. In the early years, the EERB and PERB spent a lot of time in the field conducting representation elections among employees who were choosing whether or not to be represented by a union, and if so, which union. That required on-site elections, meaning PERB staff actually went to the respective employers' work sites and issued ballots and put ballots in boxes and counted them and so forth. As collective bargaining under our statutes has matured, we're having significantly fewer such issues arise because once those kinds of choices are made, they tend to be something that employees don't go back through very often. In addition, we've taken to conducting elections by Postal Service mail ballot rather than by having on-site elections, which takes significantly less staff time to administer. What we now have is a mix that consists almost exclusively of unfair labor practice charge cases, although we still get the occasional certification or representation case, which you've mentioned with respect to 609. We, too, are very concerned about getting those representation or certification cases out as soon as possible, and currently on our docket there are none because we were able, since last May, to clear them all out. And they are a priority and a separate category on our docket at this point, and we pay attention principally to those when they are there, and when they're not, we then move into the administrative law judge decisions and the dismissals arising in unfair labor practice charge cases. Those are sometimes much more complex and take a little more time, and sometimes less so. One of the things that our chair didn't say to you yesterday was that, you know, more staff and more money are a good thing. She's mindful of her role as the spokesman for the agency, and also that we're gubernatorial appointees. So, but, you know, anybody who can see their way clear to give us a little more resource, we'd be happy to have it. On the other hand, this is not a time when people are talking about increasing resources. People are talking about decreasing them because of the economy we face. And one of the things about that economy is it tends to produce disputes between employees and public employers over how to absorb the impact of reductions in resources. Managers in public agencies must figure out how to operate those agencies with fewer resources, and that typically translates in two decisions: reducing hours, reducing employees, trying to do the same with less, or trying to do less with a lot less. Those kinds of circumstances tend to produce contentious collective bargaining negotiations, which often result in unfair labor practice charges being filed as the parties posture themselves with the public trying to seize the high moral position and manage to get us embroiled in that process by filing charges against each other to secure that high ground. And often what happens, however, with those charges is they tend to wash out once the parties reach a bargain, which they ultimately do, either by themselves or sometimes with our assistance, which we provide when we conduct settlement discussions with respect to those unfair practice charges.
Thank you.
Senator Fuller.
Ms. Martinez, I'll start with you. We had a delightful conversation, and I think you have answered most of my concerns that the Pro Tem has brought forward about the backlog of cases, as well as exactly what priorities you're using and so forth. So I have two thoughts. The first is that if you're not qualified to serve, then I don't know who is, because you probably have more experience in this area than anybody that could be sitting in that chair. So I am satisfied that you have the qualifications. But sort of a curiosity question, and that is, as the chair, do you have plans, or do you already have any benchmarks to measure the future performance of the board itself?
Definitely getting that docket way, way down is something that is on my mind all the time. At this point, we have 58 cases on our docket, and out of those 58, we already have 10 cases that are circulating, where there are drafts out there. So that by 3 weeks from now, it's going to be 48. Now, obviously, cases come onto the docket because they're appealed, but I really do think that the board is working very, very hard to get the number of cases on appeal down and do it as quickly as we can. And again, I think that there's a collective sense of that urgency, and we're all very much aware of it. The board council are very much aware of it, working together, and I think the board is too. So, getting that docket down.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Mr. Huguenin, you've worked on me, but I haven't quite gotten it completely right yet, I don't think. But I enjoyed our conversation, and I'm assuming that you or your law office has severed all of your ties to your prior clients?
That is correct. I worked in-house as an attorney for the California Teachers Association from approximately 1979 until approximately 2000, and then I relocated to Sacramento and opened my own office. Since last April, actually the 1st of May, when I received an appointment and was sworn in, I have shut down my law office, collapsed it into a much smaller space in a place near my home in Rancho Murrieta, where I can go look at the books and play with my computer. But at the State Bar, my professional address is the Public Employment Relations Board. Nobody trying to find me through the State Bar is going to think that I'm in the private practice of law, which indeed I am not. The last iteration of my resume, which I provided to the committee through Mr. Torres, is on the letterhead of a law practice office, but that's just a matter of happenstance. I am no longer seeking clients, and I'm no longer practicing law. The Public Employment Relations Board is my full-time and only activity.
Okay. Well, I have to say that the time that you were a consultant between 73 and 79 was when everything was right with schools, everything was perfect, so I'm assuming that everything will continue to be good, and they're certainly my happy days of memory, so I'm sure your qualifications will be well met today. Thank you.
It's amazing how the further away we get from the experiences, the rosier they become.
Isn't that true? Senator Dutton.
So you mean after next year I'll think fondly of this place, right? First of all, I want to thank you for the speedy response to my request on
Great, you got it.
From
Wonderful.
Riverside. That was good to know.
Perfect.
I had suggested during my conversation with our two appointees here that might be nice for, they get involved in county and city disputes, things of that nature, and I had requested some information about their involvement in a case down in Riverside County, and they furnished that to me. I think it might be good for, I suggested to them they might want to actually make sure more legislators kind of see what kind of job they're doing down in their districts. So I want to thank you for that. Having a lot of the questions have already been asked, I'm just, with an increase in workload, and we discussed this a little bit briefly, but with an increase in workload and obviously less resources, and due to these tight economic times, we're seeing more layoffs, and you're getting a little bit more work probably related to that. I understand your funding all comes from the general fund at this point. Have you given any thought to maybe we should be charging a fee for the services, or maybe we should set up a program to where once they appeal, there should be some kind of a cost reimbursement for the services that you provide?
That is actually an issue, as we discussed, that I intend to bring forward to our advisory committee. Mm-hmm. The advisory committee is a group of folks, both labor and management, who serve to kind of be a sounding board for the board. And lots of times we'll put forth regulations or different procedures or different ways to do things and just kind of see what they think about that. And I know that the State Mediation and Conciliation Service, which is a sister state agency, is now charging for a number of activities that they perform. And, that it's been bouncing around PERB for the last couple of years. Should we, shouldn't we? And what would we charge for? Would we just charge for, that initial unfair practice charge as it walks in the door? Would we have a fee if it was appealed to the board? Would we have a fee if the party wanted to appeal it, somewhere else? And so that's actually something that we are going to put out there. I don't know that within the agency itself that we've had specific discussions about it. People know about it, but we've not had, definite recommendations as to how much or when or why. But we will be exploring it, I think, within the agency and then definitely with the advisory committee, and then that would take regulation changes. Sure.
Well, I'd be interested in your opinions regarding something like that.
Okay.
Actually, I was very satisfied with both appointees. I'm prepared to support them when it's the appropriate times.
Very good. Very good. Senator De Leon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pro Tem. A couple questions. I think my colleagues hit a couple notes with regards to the backlog. Obviously, both of you struck a chord with regards to the budget cutbacks and the impacts it's had on you as commissioners as well as your staff. With regards to the budget cutbacks, have you seen any different type of cases that has come before you in an uptick in unfair labor practices? Like you said, Gene, you had underscored, and I highlighted a certain point when a lot of public sector workers are being laid off right now or released altogether. We're starting to see, obviously, we may be seeing an uptick. And why don't you share your observations with regards to the economy and that correlation, if there is, in fact, any correlation with regards to an uptick in unfair labor practices?
Okay. We expect there would be an uptick. The rules that we operate under and that our statutes provide for employers and their employees in these circumstances are typically that decisions having to do with making the agency or the entity or the school district smaller are not decisions that the employer is required to negotiate with its employees and their union. On the other hand, they are required to negotiate about the impacts and effects of those decisions on things that are within the scope of representation, wages, leaves, hours, those kinds of things. So what tends to happen is that once an employer gives an indication that they're going to make cutbacks, a firm decision is the way the cases refer to it. Once the employer's made such a firm decision, then the employer is obligated, when and if it receives a request to negotiate about those matters, to negotiate about the effects, the impacts and effects. So when that negotiation doesn't occur, or when the employer fails to provide the union upon request some information, reports, whatever, that have to do with that subject matter, then it's a very fertile field for unfair labor practice charges. Most employers understand that obligation, though, while they may not enjoy going through the process because it's difficult. Nonetheless, most of them comply with their obligations to negotiate about those effects. And so it's only when those negotiations can't really reach the kind of closure that everybody hopes they would that the parties start pulling out the unfair labor practice charge arrows from their quiver and shooting them at each other, again, as part of this public posturing process that tends to go on when negotiations are very contentious. And I expect we're going to see more and more of those as or until our revenue posture for the state and its local political subdivisions is improved. But, you know, we haven't seen a big uptick at this point. And that may just be because the parties are relatively experienced in these areas, and they're not refusing to talk to each other. They're looking for solutions and hopefully finding them. Our job is to sort of referee the system and encourage them to do the negotiating they're required to do, not to really help them find that solution, because that's something that's within their ken.
Okay, Ms. Martinez.
I agree with Gene. I think that with times being tough, employers, I know, feel bad about having to lay off people. I think unions feel bad because they're their members and they're losing members. And I think that there's, you know, labor relations does work, labor management relations. And I would think that they're coming together to try and have these cuts be as painless as possible. You know, they can come to us and file charges, you know, alleging bad faith bargaining, but at the end of the day, that really doesn't get them very far. And we really encourage folks to try and keep negotiating, even when a charge has been filed and if there's been a complaint issued. That's a big piece of our work, is to try and get the parties to settle that dispute. So are we going to see these kinds of charges? I would say yes. I'm hoping that we won't see a lot of them because people are dealing with reality.
Okay, and one last question is you have one vacancy currently on the per board, and I think soon to have 2 vacancies. Has that had an impact on the work of the board?
There's a board member who's terming out today, so that will leave 3 board members. We can have up to 5, so it's up to the governor to decide.
Well, there's a question actually later in there, which is, has that had an impact on you? You have 1 vacancy, soon to have 2. You stated you have 3. Does that have an impact on you and the work of the commission?
Well, during our term, we've had 4, so that's what I know. Yes, if we were fully...
You'll have 3 as of tomorrow.
As of today, right, as of tomorrow. Correct. If we were to get another board member, yes, there would be more panels. There would be more cases probably going out. Yes.
Okay, so the answer is okay.
Yes.
And lastly, I would say, not so much a question, but a commentary. Obviously, you've been there since day one, and yes. I think Ms. Alquist or Ms. Fuller had mentioned, obviously, the acumen and the experience that has been accumulated for decades is much needed, obviously, during this very difficult period.
I was hired when I was 5.
Yeah, and I believe it. I did mention that for the record.
I want it in the record.
For the record. And with regards to Gene, I've had the pleasure to know Gene and work with Gene, at the California Teachers Association, where I know that you dedicated, 21 years of your life being in-house counsel at the CTA and done such a fine, remarkable job, and obviously 10 to 11 years doing individual cases of labor and employment cases. So it's with a pleasure that I support you and both of you today. So
thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator De Leon's question, though, does prompt one more concern that I have, which is, and it does relate again to the number of board members. You'll have 3.
We'll have 3.
Which means everyone needs to show up to establish a quorum, number 1. And you said a moment ago, Madam Chair, that with 3 or 4 members, you have fewer panels and it takes longer for cases to get out. So you've cleaned up the problem about
Well, I had four, yeah.
the delay between the time of filing an initial complaint and an administrative law judge actually beginning to hear the case. That's very positive. But what about cases sitting on the board docket itself for a long period of time? What can you assure us in that regard?
I can assure you that the 3 board members that are currently at work are working very, very tirelessly.
I don't doubt that. But
And if we get another board member, it allows us to have different panels.
Okay, what's the time lag between when the board receives a case from an ALJ and the time when the board then rules on the case?
It's approximately a year right now. We're starting work on administrative law judge decisions that were issued in the first part of 2011.
Correct.
We just passed a law in this state that the appellate courts weren't all that thrilled about, I don't think, requiring that in certain CEQA matters relating to major projects that they have 175 days to render their decisions. And there are generally 3 judge panels, 3 justice panels here. This is a concern. And, I do think that all these hearings always bring out some important information that allows us to appropriately and respectfully push the administration a little bit to say, please make these appointments, Governor, if we expect this PERB board to work and to dispense the justice sooner rather than later, because the thing that's hurt the PERB's reputation over the years, and I've practiced before PERB when I was a younger guy and an attorney, but the thing that's hurt its reputation is the fact that just because of the resource question, really, it just takes too darn long. Cases just sit forever, and you've taken care of the one. Sounds like you've addressed one part of it, a very important part of it.
At the staff level.
At the staff level, but then you got the second part of it, where how long is a case going to sit in and among the PERB board here, and then what's happening to the parties and the people they represent in the meantime? Not good.
Absolutely. I agree with you, and at our case management meetings that we have every 3 weeks, that's the speech that the board members have been getting.
Well, it certainly would help to have 2 more appointed members get up to speed as quickly as possible. Thank you. Let's hear from witnesses in support of the nomination or nominations. One or the other. You can use this microphone right here. I'm going to ask the members of the public, you can, relatively brief, if you would, who you are and why you support the nominees.
Thank you very much. My name is Allison Woodall from the University of California, where I manage the team of labor and employment attorneys in the Office of General Counsel within UC's Office of the President. And I'm here today to express our support for the confirmation of Anita Martinez as chair of the board. We have worked with Ms. Martinez extensively over the years when she was the regional director in PERB's San Francisco office, and always found her to be hardworking, professional, very dedicated to resolving the issues and disputes, and very knowledgeable about the labor laws and its implications. While Ms. Martinez has from time to time ruled against us, and we haven't always agreed with her decisions at times, there was never any question that she was always fair and very deliberative in her decision-making process. And on a personal level, I can say she's a pleasure to work with. And so I'm very happy to be here to express our support for her confirmation.
Thank you very much. Next, please. Just keep coming. Line up. Line up.
I'm going to jump the queue.
Take your 12 and a half seconds and just give it your all.
Okay. My name is Margot Rosenberg. I'm a partner at Leonard Carter, and we represent labor unions. I head up our public sector. I head up our public sector unit, and I've worked with Anita Martinez for 21 years in that capacity. I'm thrilled to be here to support her nomination today. You have many nominees that come before you who are well qualified. Anita, as some of you have said, is uniquely qualified for this position. Her two main functions as board chair are adjudicative and running the organization. Because she is so well versed in the law, and much more importantly than well versed in the law, really embraces wholeheartedly the purpose of the collective bargaining laws, so that she wholeheartedly believes in the right of employees to be represented by unions, and of unions to represent their members.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
We got a lot of people, and we want to.
Thank you very much.
Just if you can be succinct, we appreciate it.
I'm William Kay. I've spent 37 years as a management representative representing school districts, cities, counties, and special districts. I want to recommend Anita Martinez without any reservation. And we want to laud the governor for appointing someone who probably brings more experience, especially the staff experience and the agency experience to the job than any other candidate prior to this date. I also want to state on a personal level, I've known Ms. Martinez since the work that we did on joint union management, labor relations, improving labor relations in our school districts in the 1980s. And I think that the spirit of that work is still part of the PERB culture, a very important part of the PERB culture. Without reservation, we recommend it.
Thank you very much.
Bob Purcell, Director of the Labor's International Union Public Employee Department. As a former PERB Board Counsel, I have worked with Anita and with Jean and strongly recommend their confirmation. And if I may, this is a tremendous group of appointees, and I personally and the Labor's Public Employee Department also support the confirmation of Joan Markoff as General Counsel to DPA, and also Ellen Wides as Division Chief at Cal OSHA. Thank you very much.
Very good. I'm not sure. We're going to have to take a vote of the committee as to whether or not we accept that latter testimony. You may have to come back. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair and members, Caitlin Vega for the California Labor Federation. We are pleased to have two such highly qualified nominees for the PERB board. We have seen a difference at PERB already in terms of the efficiency in addressing complaints and getting rid of the backlog. This board plays an incredibly important role toward promoting good labor relations in the public sector, and we just can't imagine anyone better to be appointed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vega.
Michelle Cass with the Service Employees International Union. We're very pleased to support both of these very well-qualified candidates and seek your confirmation for them.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Marianne Massenberg, UAW. We represent 25,000 workers at UC and CSU, academic student employees, and we've worked with Anita Martinez and are happy to support her since 1983 when we first petitioned. You couldn't have anyone better. A lot of times professional neutrals define their success with parties in labor management by having everyone equally mad at them. And I have to say Anita is one of those rare individuals where at the end of the day, it's not that everybody's mad at her. Everybody's really happy with her. I don't know how she does it, but she's terrific.
Do you give lessons?
Sure.
We're
Sure.
saying a few of us.
Mr. Chairman, members, Dwight Stenbach, League of California Cities, also here in support of Anita. She is, I agree with Senator Fuller, she's probably one of the more qualified people to be nominated for this post, and so we recommend confirmation.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair and Senators, Joshua Golka with the California School Employees Association here in support of both appointees. CSEA has many years of experience working with Ms. Martinez on contentious, complicated, and sometimes even unreasonable labor disputes, and we're happy to say that in the end, we always know we're going to get a fair decision no matter which end of it we're on. It matters who sits on PERB, and it matters that they respect the precedent and the law, and for those reasons, we support the appointment of both of these candidates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Priscilla Winslow on behalf of the California Teachers Association, and I'm proud to be here to commend the appointment of both Jean Huguenin and Anita Martinez. I, too, have worked with both of them for more years than I'd like to count. I think in appointing these two people, the governor has recognized the importance of having expertise on the Public Employment Relations Board, which is something that both sides of the aisle, both management and labor, greatly need and would appreciate. So I commend their appointments and urge their confirmation here.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gregory Danis. I'm the president of Danis Walliver Kelly. We are a management side law firm, and I'm also in my spare time the board president in my local community in San Mateo County. I started working with Anita in 1980 when she was apparently 9 years old, and mostly as an administrative law judge in settlement hearings. And to echo a past speaker, both parties come in angry, emotional, and Anita manages to diffuse and speak substance and actually have the parties listen to her. And I can't remember a conference where we didn't settle. I'm also pleased to have submitted a letter on behalf of Mr. Huguenin, with whom I worked on the other side of the aisle for many years in proceedings. So I support them both very much.
Thank you for coming to testify. We appreciate it.
Looks like I'm last, so I'll be brief. Irene Ortega with the California State Association of Counties, pleased to support Ms. Martinez in her nomination. Thank you.
Thank you very much for testifying. Are there any witnesses in opposition to the nominations or a nomination? There's not. I think the testimony and the answers to our questions and your statements and your experience speak for themselves. Two very good public servants who know what they're doing here in a very difficult and often contentious area of the law, and I know I'm proud to support both of your confirmations. We take a motion. Moved by Senator De Leon. Please call the roll.
Senator Zalquist?
Aye.
Alquist, aye. De Leon? Aye. De Leon, aye. Fuller?
Aye.
Fuller, aye. Dutton? Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
We'll leave the roll open. I think Senator Dutton had to step out for just a moment, but it'll go to the floor probably 5-0, I'm sure, and we'll take up your confirmations forthwith. And thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you need 5? Yeah. We'll take a 7.5-minute break.
Yes. Yes. Flying fingers.